So welcome very much to our Engaging Our Differences for a Better Community webinar. This is being put on by the League of Women Voters of the East Shore. And we've started a new project where we hope to build conversations and better understanding between citizens, so we are able to communicate and listen to each other, even though we may have varying opinions on things. It will be an interactive process going over the next couple months. Today's webinar is sort of the first launching out, step out. We had pretty much an exact copy of this the other day. It will be a kind of different event than what you're probably used to. This one, we want to be one for sort of each of us to have some personal reflection time. We're going to view some videos, think about them. Then I'm going to share some hopes of things that you might do over the next couple of months. And then we're going to come back in November, and we'd like to have that be a conversation and discussion time, so people can talk about things that they observed and reflected on over the past few months. I want to thank the National Institute for Civil Discourse for offering these video resources and also sharing the free Think video, which we'll watch. So I encourage you to use this half hour to sort of examine how you personally feel about engaging with others, and particularly those who might differ from you, and how you might consider going forward in your relationships with other people. So without further ado, we'll get started. I'm going to start the first video. Please let me know if you're having any problems hearing.
Welcome to Engaging Differences, a program that reminds us how we can work together to address the challenges of our day. In today's society, we're connected by social media and technology, and yet we feel more disconnected than ever. Our politics are polarized. The media is partisan. Families are divided, and friendships are strained. Wherever you go and whoever you talk to in the country, everyone is feeling so distraught about how divided we are. And yet they want to change things, but it seems they don't know how. Part of the problem, it seems to me, is people are seeking affirmation instead of information. We don't have enough opportunities to talk to someone with whom we disagree so we can hash things out and understand a different perspective. But there is real hope. I've seen people have conversations calmly and articulately, and at the end of them, they really do understand each other better, and they can see how similar they are. Here's what some of our fellow Americans from all backgrounds and political persuasions have to say about the problem, but more importantly, what we can do about it.
Okay, I'm going to switch to another video, and then we will hear from those other people in a minute. So just 1 second. Oh, we're not hearing anything yet, are we?
I feel uncomfortable around.
There we go.
Personally, I feel uncomfortable around conflict.
Now we're here today to find out how to argue.
But conflict is useful. The question is, how do you deal with conflict most effectively? Here we go. I am author of Negotiating the Non-Negotiable: How to Resolve Your Most Emotionally Charged Conflicts. Have you found yourself in an argument that felt so frustrating, so at a core aggravating?
That's the silliest opinion I've ever heard.
And it felt just non-negotiable. Well, congratulations, You're a human being. We all experience conflict in our lives. And seeing what's going on in our world today, my hunch is you were probably having at least one of these conflicts about politics. Our country has fallen into what I believe is a tribal trap. Anything that other side says, I shall not believe, I shall not give any credibility to, and I'm going to do everything I can to prove I'm right, you're wrong, and to stifle you down, to raise me up. The problem is not with the what. What are we arguing about? The problem is with the how.
How should we argue?
How can we be more effective? And what I've found is that there's three big barriers that we can actually overcome to have more effective conversations. The big things: 1, identity; 2, appreciation; and 3, affiliation. Let's start with identity.
Now, first of all, this is a hot issue.
Why do we get so emotional in these conflict situations? It often goes back to something deeper: identity. What are the core values, the core beliefs that are feeling threatened inside of you as you're having that conversation with the other side? The moment your identity gets hooked in these conflicts, all of a sudden your emotions become 100 times more powerful. Boy, this is a wholly different conflict now. It's now your pride. Your sense of self is on the line. You need to know who you are and what you stand for. What are the values and beliefs that are driving me to fight for this stance on this issue? The more you understand who you are, the more you can try to get your purpose met and stay balanced, even when the other threatens those core values and beliefs. Each side wants to feel appreciated, and yet the last thing they want to do is to appreciate the other side. That's a problem.
Listen and understand.
When you're in the midst of the conflict, don't talk. Take the first 10 minutes. Consciously listen to the other side. What's the value behind their perspective? What's the logic, the rationale? Why do they hold this perspective on immigration or healthcare? Once you truly understand and see the value in their perspective, let them know, I hear where you're coming from. And you know what? That makes sense. There is nothing more in the world that we like than to feel appreciated. Recognize your power to appreciate them. Third, affiliation. What's the emotional connection like between you and the other side? We typically approach these conflict situations as me versus you. My opinion on healthcare versus yours. My party's perspectives on immigration versus yours. That's just going to leave the two of you like rams butting heads.
Find common ground.
Turn that other person from an adversary into a partner. So it's no longer me versus you, but the two of us facing the same shared problem. Ask the other person, look, what's your advice on how we can get as many of our interests met at the same time? Change the nature of your conversation. Now you put these three things into practice, it can transform your relationships. Imagine what would happen if we started a revolution, but a positive revolution of greater understanding, greater appreciation, greater affiliation, how we could transform politics, how we could transform our country and ultimately our world. I believe it's possible, but it starts with each one of us.
Okay, so now I just wanted us each on this pad of paper that we hopefully you have near you, just to reflect a little bit on what we just heard. Maybe it's the issues of identity appreciation or affiliation that caught your attention, or maybe it was something else the professor said or something that Katie Couric said in the first video. Let's just take a minute and I'll get ready for the next one while you're thinking about it and reflecting on it. Okay, we're ready for the next one.
Welcome to Engaging Differences, a program that reminds us how we can work together to address the challenges of our day. In today's society, we're connected by social media and technology, and yet we feel more disconnected than ever. Our politics are polarized. The media is partisan. Families are divided, and friendships are strained. Here's what some of our fellow Americans from all backgrounds and political persuasions have to say about the problem, but more importantly, what we can do about it.
I think there are many who feel that we're in decline as a nation and as a democracy. And it's due to our inability to constructively communicate with each other on the issues that are facing us.
Growing up in a Black community, growing up in a low income community, everything can be so one-sided and narrow that when you grow and you learn and you become more and you make acquaintances with different people from different political views, it allows you to see more things that you wasn't exposed to in the beginning.
I think the most important thing that we can do as Americans, for our country, for our world, is engage differences constructively. Yes, we have huge issues we need to figure out, but ultimately the heart of all of it and the foundation of all of it is learning how to live, work, and play with people that may not think like you. One of the greatest reasons why our country is amazing is we are a melting pot.
I knew someone who knew about my religion and they just assumed that I felt a certain way about their identity because of my religion. And so they kind of came at me like attacking me. And that was really a frustrating experience for me. I felt like no matter what I said, I couldn't win. So then I found myself trying to point out to them how hypocritical they were being. And it really, as soon as that happened, there was no chance for a productive conversation.
Sometimes I find it healthy not just to go to the people who reinforce my ideas, but people who might really take something and think carefully about it, maybe even challenge me on it. I have a office neighbor right through this wall. He and I think differently, and he likes to challenge my Pollyanna assumptions, and is good at it, and makes me think carefully about what I'm saying, how I'm reading, what I'm thinking about this idea or this text or this author or this thought.
Where I'm at, I'm a commander of a medevac unit. I'm a captain in the Idaho Army National Guard. And I found that, especially in my position, there is no way at all that I could be successful in executing my job, especially in the combat environment, if I wasn't able to, or even willing to listen to any of my guys. It's incumbent upon us as commissioned officers to, talk to everybody in our unit. They have something important to contribute, and all you have to do is ask and listen. And if they disagree, we'll listen even harder, because there's probably a good reason why they disagree.
One time I tried to reason with somebody who had a different point of view, and we just both weren't really listening to each other. So that didn't really work out, because we both came into the conversation with what we wanted it to end up as, and in two different ways. So we weren't going to convince each other, because they weren't listening to me, I wasn't listening to them. It was like we were both talking to walls. So
being the only African-American woman in the room and in the spaces that I normally interact in, and, you know, having to connect with individuals who don't understand what it's like to be a minority, nor what it's like to, you know, grow up in a low-income community. I've always had to share personal stories about myself to allow others to understand where I come from and why these issues are so important to not only me, but to other Black communities and other minority or underrepresented communities.
I think you have to come from like a place of humility. You can't come into a conversation thinking that you have the best opinion and it's morally correct, and that everybody else is like morally wrong if they don't agree with you. And you've got to respect the other person. You like have to see them as like a real human being. They're not just like something to be argued with. And I think that mindset going into these types of conversations is really what sets the stage for any productive conversation to happen.
It's important to know, like, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. Like, you don't always have to be right. And I think it's okay to have the approach of, okay, like, I was wrong. Like, I was uneducated on this, and not trying to have too much of an ego where you can't even change your opinion.
One thing that I have to remind myself is I need to check my tone. I mean, if you have a holier than thou tone, of course you're not going to have someone really engage with you.
And that maybe our ability to not just give solutions or to pass judgments would be enhanced if we could ask better questions.
I want to help you, or I want to understand where you're coming from, rather than I want to be right.
When I listen well, sometimes it even makes the other person listen better.
To be able to speak, you know, without being spoken over. Listening also, you need active listening. I mean, body language is critical when you're talking.
We need to learn to understand each other, where each person is coming from. If that means walking a mile in someone else's shoes, then we need to do that, to understand what those people are going through, instead of just assuming that we understand.
To just shut off that storyline in your own head, and just listen.
Acknowledging that our differences are what unites us. You know, people let that divide us, but it's really kind of what makes us American, you know.
Okay, so we have one more section, and but I wanted to give you again like a minute to reflect and think about things. I hope that that this slightly different type of event or webinar works for you, to sort of take a breath and think about these things before having to discuss them. So I will set up for the next piece while you're thinking. Okay, so I wanted to just sort of go back over, I thought these key principles are very important. I'm putting in the chat box a link so that you could get a copy of these key principles yourselves. You know, first, I think it was important to hear how engaging our differences constructively is valuable. Excuse me, I think sometimes we think it's not worth bothering with, but there is, as it says here, a great satisfaction when we connect with each other. And particularly when we click with someone who we often think we don't agree with. It can be very costly and painful for us if we don't connect with others, as well as within our community. And also that engaging can lead to better insights and better decisions made, because we're taking in all the different viewpoints. And I like this, to know that it's essential to achieve a more perfect union, which is something we all want in our lives. So listening for understanding, as the young man said, listening, looking at people's body language, really listening is immensely important, and a skill that I know I have to work at. I don't know if any of you do, but I know that it's sometimes easy to start formulating an answer in your head before you really hear what the other person's saying. And so taking, as the Harvard professor said, stop talking for the first few minutes and really listen and keep an open mind and be willing to really listen curiously to hear what that person thinks. So again, these different important principles, empathy, obviously it's, before you can start understanding someone, you need to have some empathy for what they're going through, what their life is like. And humility, I thought that was a young woman really spoke quite well about that, we can't assume that we have a sort of the moral higher ground. And conscience and, respecting and empathizing. It does not necessarily mean that you agree. It just means that you're trying to understand why someone feels a certain way. And that carries over into the principled advocacy. We're all wanting to communicate with each other, but it doesn't mean you have to give up your own convictions and beliefs. But also we can, make the case for the merits of our beliefs without resorting to attacks on the other person's character or their beliefs and views. And, I think we heard that from a number of the people that kind of finding that common ground, where do we agree? What's important to all of us? I think that's why we titled this, for a better community. I think everyone wants a better community. So that's one place where we can all start out together. We all want there are different things that we all expect and would like to have happen in our lives and in our communities. So here's sort of what I hope you will do going forward. I'd like us to explore engaging our differences over the next couple months. We've got the election season coming up. There'll be a lot of opportunities to hear lots of opinions, candidates' opinions, other citizens' opinions on issues that we may care about very deeply. And we'll be most likely hearing two sides, people who agree with us and people who don't. So we'd like to encourage you to create what's called an observational journal. And it really is just taking the time to note down and reflect a little bit on what you've actually seen in your community. And I think the election season is a perfect time to do that because, like I said, all these issues are brought to the forefront. People are talking about them a lot more because they're trying to decide who they want to vote for and what issues those candidates stand for. So I think but we also come up against this in our workplace, within our families. There's lots of other places that we will see opportunities to engage our differences, or places where we notice maybe it's, people aren't really listening to each other or aren't engaging with each other. And what do we think about that? And how would that affect our actions in the future? So then in November, we're hoping to bring everybody back together and actually take the time to discuss and hear what your reflections were over the last few months. By November, the election will be over. Hopefully you will have had some time to reflect. And we will also be sending out occasional emails to you with either kind of thought-provoking questions or another maybe very short video that you can view and think about to sort of just keep you in that rhythm of looking at the process of engaging our differences. So that is, we're just about coming to the very end of it all. I want to thank you for taking the time out of everyone has a busy life, but obviously it's nice to see that you wanted to take the time to think about this and to join us in this. And I hope you will continue on this path with us over the next few months. We're hoping maybe to have a speaker in January or February that will also talk about maybe some of the things that have come out of our reflections. Please, take the time if you can to reflect and think about it, because I think that part of us actually beginning to do these things, engaging our differences with each other is for us to sort of take that first step. And I think thinking about it is a great first step. So again, as promised, a 30-minute webinar. I will be more than happy to be in contact with you. You could reach me and the other league people. I will quickly type in our, in case you don't know it, it's eastshoreleague@yahoo.com. That's our email address. So if you have questions or concerns, or you want to, or suggestions, if you have an idea or something that you would like to see the league utilize as part of our part of this sort of project that we're on, please don't hesitate. So, oops, I see there's a question. Yes, other people can sign up. We will also share this video. I'm going to try to get it up on our YouTube. We have a little YouTube channel, and hopefully, actually, we would love to build on this. We realize this is just sort of the first step, and that's why we didn't want to just do one thing and then say, okay, we're done. We want it to be a process and build on it as things go on. So, thank you. Thank you for thanking us, but thank you for participating. And yes, please reach out, welcome your family and friends, to ask other people. You can go to this Engaging Differences website, which is a great one. And that will lead you to some other resources. So the National Institute for Civil Discourse is a wonderful organization, and they have lots of other resources for us all to use. So I hope you'll have a great rest of your evening. And thank you, Anita. And thank you all again for taking the time out of your busy lives. Good night and good night.